We're going to be talking about drawing eyes, the most intimidating yet most fascinating of facial features. So we're going to start with some anatomy. You're going to draw a circle. This is your eyeball. And draw it light until you get it right, because you're going to be erasing most of this. So your eyeball sits inside of your eye socket. And we're going to draw another circle, which is about half the size of the first circle. This is your iris, or the colored part of your eye. Then we're going to draw a circle right in the center of the iris. That's the pupil. It's always in the center because it's a hole. Don't believe me? Check out this close-up picture of a human eye. Do you see the hole? It's pretty crazy, right? So the pupil is always, always, always in the center of the eye. It never moves. It might get bigger or smaller, but it doesn't move. So now what we're going to do is create the eyelids. So the upper eyelid is almost always covering at least part of the iris, unless if you're terrified or surprised, then you might see all of it. But usually it's covered partially. Then the lower eyelid tends to just either brush the iris or cover a little bit of it. On the outside corner of the eye, it doesn't go past the eyeball. But the inside corner, it does just a little bit, because that is your tear duct. So again, we're drawing these lightly so that we can erase them later in the event that we make a mistake, or if we need to just kind of clean things up a little bit. So that's kind of our basic eye shape. Again, everybody's eye is different. So yours might be more angular, it might be more straight across, it might be really curvy. So look at yourself, draw what you see. I'm going to add like a little bit of a highlight here, because usually, since your eyes are shiny, they have a bit of a reflection. And then right now what I'm drawing is the fold of the eyelid. So there's kind of a crease there, and that's where your eyeball meets your brow bone. So this is different for everybody too. Some of you might have a really large eyelid. Some of you may have next to no eyelid showing or no crease there. Some might be very rounded. Some might be very angular. So just be observing closely so that you can get a good likeness. And at this point, I can start to refine my edges and start to draw just a little bit darker so that my pieces kind of stick out a little bit more. And now you can see why we wanted to draw those first 3 circles really lightly, because we need to erase those. Otherwise, it would start to look pretty funky on our face if we had those big eyeballs still drawn in there. So we draw it light so we can erase it later. Once you get comfortable with the idea of like how your anatomy is laid out, then you don't need to draw those, but it's definitely a good thing to start with so that you understand what's going on under your skin. Next up is shading. Shading is probably one of the most important things to getting a good likeness and getting good value contrast. So we're going to color in that pupil. Because it's a hole, it's the darkest area on our face. It's black. And then with the iris, it usually is darker at the top than it is on the bottom, because our eyelid creates a bit of a shadow there. And then if you look closely at your iris, usually there's kind of some starburst-like patterns around there. Everybody is different though, so some might have more pattern going on than others. But generally, you have kind of a darker ring around the outer edge of your iris, and then kind of a darker or lighter starburst pattern coming out from around the pupil. And that gives you kind of a variation of values. So one thing I see a lot, I'm not sure I understand it, is people don't color in their iris. I've never seen a single person with a clear iris. So always remember to shade that in. That's really, really important. And then we're going to shade around the crease of the eyelid. So this is one of the darker areas on your face because that is the spot where your eyeball kind of meets your brow bone and it kind of goes in and folds over. So there's kind of an indentation there that makes it darker and in shadow. So the area that I'm shading right now, right under your brow bone around the bridge of your nose, is usually pretty dark, depending on your lighting. And then when we talk about eyelashes, I tend to see eyelashes just going like straight up, really evenly spaced. But if you really look at your eyelashes, they don't do that. Look at them closely. They overlap, they curve. They're a very elegant line. So when you draw them, they kind of go down a little bit over or past your eyelid, and then they curve up. So it's like you're pressing down a little harder when you start and then lightening up to get a nice light line with it. When you get towards the top of the eye, your lashes aren't going to look quite as long because they're coming out at you. They aren't moving off to the side. And then they're crossing over each other. So these are not a uniform pattern. They don't all move the same way. They crisscross a lot and kind of go all over the place. And then when we get towards the inside of the eyelid, your eyelashes aren't quite as close together. They're a little bit shorter, maybe even a little bit lighter. So don't do quite as many over there. And obviously if you're wearing mascara or eyeliner, that's going to change this quite a bit. Or if, as compared to if maybe you have like really light blonde eyelashes. So be conscious of what your face looks like when you're doing this. So are you wearing makeup? Are you not? Usually we have some shading around the eyeball itself because it is round. So we want to make it look round. There's a little bit of shadow from the eyelid there. And we're just going to kind of adjust this tear duct a little bit to make it a little more accurate. Now with the lower lid, I want you to look closely at your eye, and you'll notice that there's kind of a gap between where the lid touches your eyeball and where your eyelashes start on the lower lid. So there's a space there. So when you start drawing your lower eyelashes, make sure you take note of that and you leave a little bit of a gap. So where I start those eyelashes is just a little bit farther out from that piece that is touching the eyeball. And your lower lashes are not quite so close together as your upper lashes. They aren't quite as long. So they're going to look a little bit lighter and a little more sparse. But they're still overlapping each other. They aren't even. Then these lines at the bottom of your eye, you don't want to overdo it. It might start to make you look old, but there are definitely some shadows there. So just take note of how much there is. And then this last section, I'm just going to clean up some details, make my darks darker, my lights lighter, so we have good value contrast. That's really what makes a drawing pop. Have a wide variety of values. And again, if you're wearing makeup, this changes the whole drawing as to what kind of shading you're doing and how you make your eyelashes and your eyelids. So always be drawing what you're actually seeing. Then with the eyebrow, I generally kind of make the basic shape of the eyebrow and kind of block it in. Then I start to add in some individual hairs. So look at the direction your hairs are going. Again, they aren't even. They aren't a scribble either. So look closely. And there you have it. An eye. Thanks for watching.